26106, outlet device pull and junction boxes. 2.0.0, pull and junction boxes. Objectives: explain how to size and install pull and junction boxes, summarize the NEC requirements for sizing pull and junction boxes, summarize the NEC requirements for installing pull and junction boxes. So a pull box. It's a box-like enclosure made of sheet metal. It's used in conduit runs to make it easier to pull cables from point to point in long runs. It can also help you install conduit support bushings. This part supports the weight of the long riser cables and helps create turns in multiple conduit runs. So the National Electrical Code tells us that we have to have a box every 360 degrees. We can't go more than 4 90-degree bends without having a box. If you put a box in to fulfill this requirement, but the box is not containing any devices, it's not containing any splices, it's a pull box. You're pulling through it. Sometimes if you have a long run, it's over 1,000 feet. It makes it easier if every 250 or 300 feet or so, you put a pull box. So you can put someone there at that box with a ladder, and they can pull the wires out of that box and simultaneously feed them back in to another pipe in that box. It's just a junction point, basically. It makes our job a little bit easier to get the cables in that box. Excuse me. A pull box or a junction box is a type of electrical box that makes it easier to install conductors. It also provides a junction point for connecting conductors. In some cases, the electrical drawings will tell you their size and where to install them. Most of the time, however, electricians on the job must decide how big they should be and how many pull or junction boxes are required. They also were talking about in vertical runs. That cable has a lot of weight to it. So every 20, 30, 40 feet, you want to put cable supports. Basically, it's a big rubber wedge that goes around and between those conductors, and it wedges down into the pipe. Like I say, some of this wire is really big and it's really heavy. And if you get 500 feet, 600 feet of it vertically, it has a lot of pressure behind it. And if it gets away from you, it's gone. You can't stop it. There's no way to stop it. All right. 2.1.0, sizing pull and junction boxes. Pull boxes should be as large as possible. You'll need space for both your hands inside the box. If you're working with larger wire sizes, you'll also need room for your arms so you can feed in the wire. NEC section 314.28A through E specify the pull and junction boxes must provide adequate space and dimensions for the installation of conductors. So here is a highlight. It says, in straight pulls, the length of the box must be at least 8 times the trade size or metric designator of the largest raceway. Metric designator is not a direct conversion between inches and millimeters, but it's very close to the trade size. So where we say 1-inch conduit, we're talking about the internal diameter of that conduit, and a 1-inch conduit has an internal diameter that's larger than 1 inch. It's not an exact measurement. We make sure that we have enough room for the conductors inside that conduit. So the diameter of that 1-inch conduit is 1 inch plus. It might be 1.125 or 1.0625. It's larger than an inch. Enclosures containing a straight pull are sized at 8 times the trade size of the largest raceway. So if this raceway is a 2-inch raceway, the length of this box has to be 2 times 8. It has to be 16 inches in length, minimum. So 4 gauge or larger. Whatever size the conduit is times 8, a straight 8. Later on, I'm going to tell you to write down straight 8 and U6+. Straight 8, if it's a straight pull, it's 8 times the trade diameter or the trade size of the conduit. If it's a U pull, It's 6 times the largest conduit plus every other conduit in that side in a row. You add that to it. We'll see that. Oh, here it is right here. Where angular U-pulls are made, the distance between each raceway entry inside the box and the opposite wall of the box must be at least 6 times the trade size or metric designator of the largest raceway in a row. This distance is increased for additional entries by the sum of the trade sizes or metric designators of all other raceway entries in the same row on the same wall of the conduit of the box. Excuse me. So here we have a 3-inch and a 2-inch raceway. Well, 3 times 6 is 18, plus 2 is 20. So from these raceways to the opposite wall, this has to be 20 inches. And it just so happens that we also have a 3-inch and a 2-inch in the bottom. That's usually the case. Usually the conduits coming in are going to be the same as the conduits going out. This is just a junction point or just a pull point. So we also need 20 inches from these conduits to this opposite wall. We're measuring to the opposite wall of where the conductors enter the box. That's the dimension we're figuring when we say U6 plus. U 6 times the largest raceway plus all other raceway entries in that row. So 6 times 3 is 18 plus 2 is 20. The distance measured from the conductor or the conduit, conductor wall entry to the opposite wall must be at least 6 times the trade size of the largest raceway plus the sum of the diameters of the remaining raceways in the same wall or row. I'm going to highlight that. So I can't because that's a drawing. All right. Where angular U-pulls are made, the distance between the raceway entries enclosing the same conductors shall not be less than 6 times the trade size of the largest raceway. So here's a 3-inch conduit times 6 is 18 inches. You have to have 18 inches between these two conduits because they're containing the same cable. And here's another example. These are two 2-inch, and it's got to be 2 times 6. They have to be 12 inches apart. You can't put them right next to each other and make a big loop and come back in beside it. It says dimension A is permitted by the exception to comply with the value of 1 wire per terminal. Okay. When transposing cable size into raceway, okay. Dimension X and Z must be at least 6 times the largest raceway. And when transposing cable size into raceway size, NEC section 314.28A1 and 2, the minimum trade size raceway required for the number and size of conductors in the cable shall be used. So then they're going to look at some examples. There again, if this is straight, it's straight 8. 8 times 4, 32. This length has to be 32. The width, they do not determine the width when it's a straight pull. They say you just have to have a width large enough to accommodate the conduits, and the lock nuts that hold the conduits in place. Times 8 is the minimum length of the box. The trade size of the conduit times 8 equals the minimum length of the box. When calculating box size, always use the largest conduit size in the group. For example, the example shown, you would perform the calculation as follows. 4 inch is the largest, so 4 times 8, 32. Here's a highlight. It says, however, the box only needs to be wide enough for lock nuts and bushings to be installed on all the conduits or connectors going into it. So they don't give us a determination of how wide this box needs to be. We determine how many conduits are going in and how wide it should be. In this example, since the conductors are being pulled at an angle pull, junction or pull box containing conductors 4 gauge or larger pooled at an angle must have a distance of not less than 6 times the trade size of the largest conduit. So here's 4 times 6 is 24, plus 3 is 27, plus 2 is 29. And 4 times 6 is 24 inches, and 3 times 6 is 18 inches, and 2 times 6 is 12. These could all be perfectly adequate, depending on if these two are 12 inches away. Distance must also be increased for additional conduit entries by the sum of the diameters of all the conduits entering the box on the same side. Okay. Here's a highlight. It says, remember, the box only needs to be deep enough to allow the installation of lock nuts and bushings. In this case, a box 6-inch deep would work. Okay. And then they have a note. It says, it's a good idea to label every junction cover with the circuit number, the panel it came from, and where it's going. This will help the next person who works on the junction box. 2.2.0 Installing pool and junction boxes. Long runs of conductors should not be made in one pool. Pool boxes installed at convenient intervals will keep the conductors from getting stretched. Often, the length of the pool is decided on the job site by workers or their supervisors. Conditions on the job site also play a big role. It might seem like pool boxes add extra work to and cost more money, but they save a lot of time and work when pulling conductors. If possible, install boxes in places that allow electricians to work easily. For example, if you might have an installation where the conduit comes up to the corner of a wall and changes direction at the ceiling, a pull box installed too high will force an electrician to stand on the ladder when feeding conductors. In addition, it doesn't allow any room for supporting the weight of the wire loop or the cable pulling tools. Here's a knockout kit. This is a battery operated, and it makes a nice clean hole in a cabinet. You have to drill a starter hole at least a 1/4 inch in diameter, and then you can get this smallest spindle into the hole. Then you can cut a 1/2 inch hole using the smallest die, and then you can move up to this larger bolt. And this larger bolt will do 3/4, 1 inch, 1.25 inches. You can go on up. Let's see what they say to this. Knockout punch kit. When it's possible to accurately anticipate the raceway entrance requirements, it may be necessary to cut the required lock nuts on the job. This can be accomplished with a knockout punch kit, figure 30. 2.0.0 section review. A straight pool contains 2 race. Oh, I'm not going to do these questions. Okay, we're going to skip the questions. I'll let you do these on your own. If you have any difficulty with it, put it in the comments section, and you all can help each other with these answers. Very good. This concludes Module 26.106, Outlet Device Pull and Junction Boxes. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, maybe give me a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Hey, this is Brian Young. If you liked my video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'll see you on the next video.